So, first of all, thank you for taking time to chat with me. Really enjoyed the film. This is actually kind of a unique full circle moment because I was supposed to talk with you guys at South by Southwest in 2020 for the climb, and then
What
obviously
happened? Why didn't you talk to
something
us,
happened.
Sean?
But so I've been a big fan of both of your films, and I think it's fair to say, the comedy genre is not typically known for its cinematography first, but I think in both The Climb and Splitsville, you have some very creative camera work. So what excites you about using the camera in such compelling ways?
I think that the medium comedy is so ripe for it. I think it's like, it we don't even know, like when we're writing, we're constantly trying to find ways to visually incorporate in perspective and like reveal things. And I just think it's a whole additional layer that is really exciting and fun. And when you go back to the beginning of, cinema
Yeah,
and you look at like Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton, they use the camera in such inventive ways
absolutely.
to tell to because that's all they had at their disposal. And they didn't even have dialogue. It was
Right.
like, and so because of that, the camera and the blocking and what was in the frame was everything. And so we constantly pose questions again to ourselves when we're writing and when we're in prep and when we're filming, is like, how do we simplify this? How do we go back to basics? How do we bring a perspective into this? And so I just, yeah, I think comedy, maybe more than any other genre, is ripe for cinematic visual storytelling.
I will say also, Mike, that I think in the early 2000s, TV pushed its way into film, and that idea of like multicam covering of things and that style of comedy, yeah, pushed in. But before that, even the movies that we were referencing in this all had really strong perspective, single camera sort of
Totally.
comedic approach.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned how this is like kind of like a return to form for comedy in that way. And I think another way in which this is a return to form is, raunchy comedies, especially the theatrical raunchy comedy is kind of a lost art. Why do you think that Hollywood kind of needs to bring this genre back?
I don't think Hollywood's going to bring it back. I think filmmakers are going to bring it back, right? So I think it's like Hollywood's just going to do whatever, audiences respond to, and filmmakers put in front of them. So, they might chase it, but at the end of the day, I think it's like, if there's filmmakers with a bold sort of vision and a point of view that want to tell a story, they will break through. Because if you look at those raunchy comedies that worked from, the 90s and the early 2000s, like, they all had really strong filmmakers at the helm. They had like people with strong points of view who were trying to tell a story in a certain way, and that's like the common denominator. So I think, yeah, I think it's, I don't think the audiences have changed at all. I don't think what audiences gravitate toward have changed. I don't think all of a sudden overnight, like, there's a lost appetite for R-rated comedies or for slapstick humor or for, emotionally resonant characters. I think that they haven't just had it.
And you mentioned the slapstick humor, and I think that's obviously very much one of the many highlights in this film, especially for something that's not an action film. The fight sequences are incredible, like the cinematography, the choreography, the production design. How did you guys, become interested in making these slapstick scenes?
Well, we wanted to make an action film, but the budget was too small, so we figured we could just make a. We had to fill it in
We
with a
only
bunch
got
of
10
emotional
minutes of
scenes.
action. Yeah, that's all we could afford.
We can only afford 10
Those
minutes
are
of
wrap.
action. The rest of the movie had to be like people talking to each other. Um, no, it felt like a really beautiful hybrid. I mean, again, this is like, we're not doing anything new. You know, there was the screwball comedies of the past would deal with characters and relationships and emotions in these way. There's a whole genre of films from Italy in the 70s that would deal with this stuff in these really fun ways. So I think our entire, the common denominator to all the comedy in this, we're always trying to find things that had universal appeal or universally understandable. And I think like physical comedy done well is universally appealing, and people respond to it. And I don't think it's, it's certainly not beneath us. I think we find it to be like wildly entertaining, especially when it's combined with uh, emotional resonance.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have anything to add?
No, I would only say that in terms of the production design and all the other elements that go into the film, I think we find all of that to be important parts of storytelling as well. And so I think we put a lot of care and have a lot of conversations around how to fill out a space and a scene to make it as full and complete as possible and support what we're trying to do with the characters.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I hope you take this as a compliment, but I feel like, even beyond the fight sequences, the blocking in your film is fantastic with like this almost like controlled chaos feeling.
Mhm.
It really reminded me in many ways of like Boogie Nights, in terms of like that controlled chaos. So how do you kind of go about achieving this feeling?
I mean, it's each scene and each setup, we're coming in with a point of view, and so we're sort of like not pulling out the camera until we understand what the perspective is and what we're trying to achieve. And then, it's about filling the frame and figuring out how to orchestrate action in the frame, and if you can't, then shifting the frame or limiting the frame. But it's just about truly it's just about intentionality and even understanding like what are all the brushes that we have to paint with and not and choosing very carefully which ones we use, but also not discarding them and only painting with one brush. And so I think, the camera is a brush, the blocking is a brush, the costumes and the colors and the dialogue, all of it contributes to story and telling story. And so if we can find ways to continue to tell story on multiple levels, then it inevitably imbues the film with like there's something for everyone to pick up on, and those are the type of films we like watching. So we when we're making one and we have the ability and people are giving us money to make a film, we want to put everything we can into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have anything to add?
No, that was more eloquent than I could ever add.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think, you kind of mentioned this, that there's a lot of depth in all of what you're doing, in terms of like the frame, the action. Some of my favorite moments in the film are like these like hidden jokes that are happening in the background. How do you guys kind of balance,
What's one of them? Do you have any of them?
yeah, so one of them was in the party scene where the ex-boyfriend is doing the massage in the background
Oh
and
yeah,
it's just like
Steel.
that
Yeah,
knocked me out.
yeah.
But how do you kind of balance having these like little jokes in the background, these hidden actions in the background without, distracting from the main action?
So we continue to write as we go, and so some of those background jokes are actually things we put in during sound mix.
Okay.
So we know that there's space. We have a long shot and we move from here to here and we go, ooh, see that person right there? Let's give them a line. And then Kyle and I will write dialogue for the background.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think it's part of the thing for us, which is like it's never over until it's completely over. And so for us, it's always a chance to be creative. It's always a chance to try and discover and push as much as we can. But I do think that, sometimes we go overboard. There is restraint. We sometimes we go too far
Yeah,
for
for sure.
sure.
Like I was at
So
the premiere and I had like, I think 3 or 4 ideas. I was like, oh, you know what I could do? And it was just like, stop, turn it off. The movie's done.
he was literally a
Can't,
Canada premiere with
can't
a
open the
notebook.
cut.
I was like, what are you doing?
Well, I cannot wait to see what you guys do next. Really enjoyed the film. Thank you so much for taking time to chat with me.
Thanks, Sean.
Right,
Appreciate it.
thank you.